It was Wednesday, late. 12 hours in the ER had left my feet aching and my brain fogged with the quiet hum of exhaustion. Still, I stopped at Miller's Bakery, the little place off Ninth and Monroe. Mom loved their apple pies, the ones with cinnamon lattice crusts and the old-fashioned logo that hadn't changed since the 80s. I remember thinking, this will make her smile. I even imagined her waiting at the porch, waving me in, telling me I was working too much again. But when I turned onto Sienna Oak Drive, my heart stopped. Dad's old Chevy wasn't in the driveway. The curtains, the pale blue ones Mom insisted made the house look peaceful, were gone. And the flower bed by the mailbox, the one she used to spend hours pruning, it had been torn up, just roots and dirt now. I parked crookedly, pie still warm in the passenger seat, rushed up the steps, the front door, locked. That door was never locked, not when I was expected, not when I was family. I rang the bell, knocked, nothing. The porch light flickered, then went out. I stepped back, heart thudding, then I saw it. A plain white envelope, no postage, no formalities, just my name. Madison, scrawled in hurried pen. I opened it right there, hands trembling. Thanks for saving our credit. Florida's beautiful. Don't call. That was it. No signature, no apology, not even a postscript. I stood frozen, the wind picking up, dust swirling around my ankles. It was like the house exhaled me, spat me out. I looked through the window. Empty. Stripped floors, no couch, no photographs, no trace of the life I once belonged to. The air felt heavier than it should have. My legs gave way. I sat on the porch steps, envelope in hand, feeling like I'd fallen through a trapdoor I didn't even know existed. You have to understand, I wasn't just financially invested in this house, I was emotionally grafted to it. This was where I learned to ride a bike, where I cried after Shane pushed me too hard on the swing, where I stayed up all night making flashcards during nursing school. This was the house I saved, for them. Last week, I wired $215,000 to clear their debt. Everything I had, gone. Sold my car, maxed out my credit line, took on a second job, all so they wouldn't lose the roof over their heads. And this was their goodbye? I laughed. Just once. A sharp, hollow sound that echoed against the empty porch. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the pie at the house, but I didn't. Instead, I stood, shaky, walked back to my car, sat in the driver's seat. Then I reached for my glove compartment and pulled out something they didn't know I had. The deed. Signed, notarized, filed, transferring ownership of this house to me. They thought they'd played me, but the game wasn't over. Not yet. They thought I was just the nurse with the bleeding heart. The girl who always came home when they cried loud enough. Who'd open her wallet faster than she ever opened her mouth. And for a while, they were right. But they never asked how I knew to ask them to sign those refinancing papers. They never read the fine print. They never thought I would be the one to move in silence. See, when Mom called me 6 months ago sobbing over the mortgage, I didn't just send money. I sent myself to the county records office. I did my homework, I asked questions, and I found out, when you pay off someone else's mortgage in full, you have the right to request ownership, if all parties agree to the refinance. So I drafted the documents, told them it was a standard restructure form for lower interest rates, and they signed it, without reading a word. Not because they trusted me, but because they didn't care enough to look. They'd already decided I was the disposable one, useful when needed, forgettable when not. And I just smiled, nodded, let them believe they were in control. But last Thursday, when the final payment cleared and that little brick house officially became debt-free, the title shifted. To me, Madison Rivera, owner of record, legal holder of 914 Sienna Oak Drive. And today, as I sat on the curb across the street, watching their moving truck disappear down the block, I didn't feel rage. I didn't even feel grief. I felt clarity, the kind that stings, the kind you only get after years of letting yourself be fooled. They'd emptied the house, but I had emptied my expectations long before. That night I walked back through the door they thought would never be theirs again. Yes, I still had a spare key. They'd taken my trust, but they hadn't taken my strategy. Inside was cold, echoing, walls bare, floors dusty. But it was mine, for once without strings. I sat in the center of the living room, cross-legged, holding the deed like a lifeline, and I let myself remember Dad hugging me just days ago, tears in his eyes, whispering, "You're our hero, Mads, we couldn't have done this without you." He was right, they couldn't. But now they wouldn't again. I pulled out my laptop, logged into the title database, scanned the sale they tried to process that morning. It had been initiated under their names, submitted to a realtor in Jacksonville, and flagged as incomplete, because the seller didn't match the deed. And by the time the buyer's agent called me asking for clarification, I was ready. I forwarded the full documentation, date stamped, signed, sealed, recorded. And then I made a second call, this time to the sheriff's department, requesting a formal report on unauthorized attempted property sale. Just in case. Because I wasn't looking for revenge, not yet. But I was done being their invisible insurance policy. I sat back, took a long breath, looked around at the empty house. It wasn't warm, it wasn't joyful. But for the first time, it was honest and completely mine. Tomorrow, they'd realize what they'd really lost. And it wasn't the house, it was me. That night, I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I didn't even tell anyone what had happened. I just made a cup of tea, turned my phone face down, and sat in the middle of the floor, in my house, letting the silence settle like dust. But silence never lasts long in a family like mine. At 2:04 a.m., the first voicemail came in, blocked number. Madison, something's wrong. The bank says the funds aren't clearing. Did you do something? Call us, please. I didn't. At 2:11, another one, mom's voice this time, shaky. Honey, it's probably a glitch, but we need you to clear it up. Call the agent, okay? For the buyer's sake. Buyers? They were worried about strangers they'd never met, but not the daughter they'd just emotionally evicted. At 2:17, the tone shifted, Shane. Madison, what the hell? You messed this up. Dad's furious. Mom's hyperventilating. The buyer's threatening legal action. You better fix this. There it was, the classic Rivera pivot, from pleading to blaming in under 15 minutes. By 3:00 a.m., I had 6 missed calls and 3 voicemails. By 4:00 a.m., I'd heard the phrase, you owe us, twice. I played each message once, then once more, on speaker, while I made breakfast. Eggs, toast, coffee with oat milk. The house was still echoey, still hollow. But that morning, the only sound that mattered was me chewing. At 7:38 a.m., I sent one text, just one, group message, no greeting, no signature. Under Texas law, selling a property you do not own constitutes fraud. I have full documentation. The attempted sale is void. The funds will be returned to the buyer. The house remains legally mine. Since you left so quickly, I've taken the liberty of changing the locks. Read receipts showed up instantly, but no one replied. For 3 hours, it was blessedly quiet. Then the phone rang again. Mom, voicemail. But this time, her voice was different. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't grief. It was collapse. Sweetheart, we made a mistake. We didn't think you'd go this far. Your dad didn't mean what he wrote. He just panicked. Can we talk, please? Talk? You don't talk to people who stabbed you while hugging you. You walk away and let them bleed on the blade they planted. I didn't reply. Instead, I called the HOA and filed a formal complaint against unauthorized listing activity. Flagged the property with city records as disputed. Made it very clear, no future actions could be taken on this house without my signature. I wasn't being vindictive, I was being precise. Because I wasn't looking to hurt them, I was looking to end the cycle. For good. Later that afternoon, I lit a lavender candle in the guest bathroom. The one they never let me repaint growing up because purple was too moody. I turned on some Billie Holiday and let her voice fill the house. As she sang about broken hearts and slow fades, I scrolled through the voicemails one last time, then hit delete all. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and smiled. Let them spiral, let them sweat. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one trying to fix things. I was the one holding the line. A few days passed, no more voicemails, no more fake emergencies. Just digital silence, the kind that speaks louder than screaming ever could. Then came the letter from their attorney, fancy letterhead, polite wording. Ms. Rivera, we request an amicable discussion, a resolution that keeps the family unit intact. Family unit, the phrase made me laugh out loud. I called his office and asked one question. Did they tell you they left me sleeping in my Honda Civic 5 years ago because Shane needed the guest room more than I needed a roof? There was a pause. No, Ms. Rivera, they did not. I hung up, no shouting, no threats, just click. Because I wasn't interested in justice, I had something better now, power with peace. So I did what I should have done years ago. I cleaned house. I pulled everything they left behind. The wedding album Mom never let me touch. The shoebox of Shane's football trophies. Dad's crusty folders filled with tax forms he never filed. A dusty briefcase marked important that turned out to be empty. I boxed it all, labeled it in Sharpie, returned to sender, taped it tight, no note inside. I drove to Uncle Lou's, where they were apparently squatting now, according to a mutual cousin's Facebook post. The porch creaked beneath my boots, smelled like stale coffee and regret. Uncle Lou opened the door, looked startled. Behind him, I saw them. Mom, frizzy-haired, sitting cross-legged on a blow-up mattress. Dad, sunken eyes, clutching a lukewarm mug. Shane, on the floor, scrolling his phone like the signal would save him. I didn't step inside, didn't even greet them, just set the box down on the porch. Dad stood slowly, eyes flickering like an old bulb trying to come back on. Maddie, you should have just said thank you. I stared at him. That was his takeaway? Thank you? For gutting me financially, emotionally, spiritually? I answered without blinking. You should have treated me like your daughter, not your retirement plan. Mom opened her mouth, but nothing came out. She looked thinner, not from grief, from finally having to carry her own weight. I turned to go, but Shane stood up. Mads, wait, what are we supposed to do now? I paused, looked him dead in the eye. Figure it out, like I always had to. No anger, no final jab, just the truth. Then I turned and walked away. No one followed, no one called out. All I heard was the box settling behind me, like a chapter closing. That night, I changed my number, deleted the family group chat, blocked all three of them, digitally, emotionally, eternally. And for the first time in my life, the quiet didn't feel empty, it felt earned. I didn't burn a bridge, I just stopped repairing one they'd set fire 2 years ago. And honestly, I didn't miss it. The day the moving truck pulled into the driveway, my driveway, I was barefoot, wearing leggings, an old college hoodie, and holding an iced coffee like it was a crown. The neighbors waved, some came over, curious. Are your parents moving back in? I smiled. No, just cleaning out the past, making room for the future. Inside, the house was half shadow, half memory. There were still faint pencil marks on the hallway trim where Mom used to measure our heights every summer. Mine stopped at 5'3". Shane's kept going. I stood there a long time, hand pressed against the wall. Not sad, not nostalgic, just done. Done letting the past hold the pen. This was my story now, and the next chapter needed space to breathe. I started small, repainted the guest room, used to be Dad's no-noise office. Now it was a warm ocean blue, calm, still, safe. I opened all the windows, let fresh air chase out the old ghosts. Next, I repotted Mom's orchids, the ones she said were too delicate to survive indoors. They bloomed for me within a week. Then came the bigger decision, the front bedroom, Shane's old room. I turned it into a ceramics studio, finally. The dream I shelved at 17 because my parents said art wouldn't pay the bills. Funny how they were okay with my money when it came in scrubs and night shifts. But now the clay was mine, the space was mine, every brushstroke on the wall, mine. And the house? It finally felt like it belonged to someone who loved it right. One morning, I found myself walking into the kitchen and laughing. Not because anything was funny, but because I could. No tension in the air, no slammed doors down the hall, no guilt clinging to the coffee mugs. Just me and silence and peace. Then, an email. From Clara, Shane's ex. Subject line, I know everything, and I'm sorry. I hovered over it for a while, then clicked. She told me about Florida, about how my parents treated her like unpaid help, cooking, cleaning, smiling through gritted teeth, while they drank champagne and shopped cruise brochures with money that was never theirs. She said she found the letter, the one Dad left on the floor, the one that called me a credit-fixing loser. She confronted Shane. He blamed me. Of course he did. I thought he was a man, she wrote, but he's just your father with a younger face. Then she ended the email with something I didn't expect. You're the only one who ever showed real integrity. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. If you ever want to talk, really talk, I'm here, woman to woman. I didn't respond, not because I was angry, but because I wasn't ready to open a door I'd only just managed to lock. And sometimes healing doesn't look like reconciliation. Sometimes it looks like choosing your own silence and honoring it. As I closed the laptop, the sunlight hit the window just right. The floor lit up golden, warm, steady, quiet. And for the first time in a long, long while, I didn't feel like I had to prove anything to anyone. This home, it wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reclamation, not just of property, but of self. Weeks passed, the emails stopped, no more voicemails, no more blocked numbers, no more birthday texts asking for just a little help till payday. I had finally blocked them all, digitally, emotionally, eternally. And for the first time in my adult life, my mind was quiet. I spent my mornings in the sunroom, reading books I once had to sell just to pay their bills. I made lavender tea at 10 a.m., not because I needed to decompress, but because I could. I hosted friends, real ones, people who brought wine, took off their shoes, and said thank you like they meant it. I planted marigolds in the front garden, the same patch where Dad once said, "No point in flowers, they die anyway." Well, these didn't, they thrived. I even started writing again. A memoir, maybe, not to expose, not to wound, but to free. To remind myself that I am not the sum of what I paid for others. I am the worth they never saw. One afternoon, while cleaning out the attic, I found an old photo. Me, age 9, covered in finger paint, missing a tooth, grinning like the world was mine. I sat down with it for a while, let myself feel the ache of all the birthdays I spent trying to earn love like a paycheck. Then I stood up and slipped the photo into a box labeled, "What I Choose to Keep." Not everything needed to go, just the parts that kept pulling me backward. That night, I lit a single candle in the hallway. The same hallway where I used to hide as a kid, ears plugged, heart racing, when they fought in the kitchen. I stood barefoot, still, grounded. And for the first time, I let myself say it out loud. I did the right thing. Not because they suffered, not because they lost, but because I stopped. I stopped begging to be loved, stopped paying to belong, stopped handing out second chances like spare change. They taught me that love was transactional, so I gave them what they gave me, nothing. Because when someone steals your trust and sells your kindness like property, you don't go back and buy it again. You board up the door and keep the key. People say forgiveness is freeing, but sometimes, so is saying no. No, you can't come back. No, I won't fix it again. No, this house isn't yours, not anymore. Last I heard, Shane was living in a shared one-bedroom outside Tampa. No wife, no car, no job, just broken promises and a phone full of unread messages. My parents? Evicted from Uncle Lou's after missing rent 3 times, bouncing between motels now, posting blurry Facebook updates pretending everything's fine. But I know better. Because when you tear down the only child who ever lifted you, eventually the ground disappears beneath you. And the fall, it's quiet. This chapter didn't end with revenge, it ended with restoration. Not of what was stolen, but of who I was before I forgot. And some doors? They don't need to be slammed. They just need to stay closed. So if you've ever poured every part of yourself into someone who only saw you as convenient, if you've ever saved the day, only to be erased the next morning, let this be your reminder. You don't need permission to protect your peace. You don't need to explain why you stopped showing up for people who never truly showed up for you. Sometimes the strongest thing you'll ever do is walk away in silence. Not out of hate, but out of love for yourself. Because healing isn't always soft. Sometimes it looks like changing the locks, like blocking the number, like repainting a room they once made you small in, and calling it home. If this story spoke to you, if you've ever had to rebuild yourself from the ashes of your own kindness, you're not alone. And if you're ready to hear more stories of silent strength, unexpected justice, and quiet redemption, subscribe to this channel. You belong here. We see you. And remember, some doors aren't meant to reopen, especially the ones you had to close to finally breathe.